In the dark and foggy streets of Victorian London, a man known only as Jack the Ripper became infamous for committing a series of brutal and mysterious murders in 1888. His crimes targeted women, mostly prostitutes, in Whitechapel, one of the poorest districts of the city. The killings shocked the public, and to this day, the identity of the killer remains unknown. Between August and November 1888, 5 women were killed in a brutal and horrifying way. These victims, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, are commonly referred to as the Canonical Five. All of them were murdered in the same general area, and their bodies were found in similar conditions, with their throats slashed and, in some cases, their organs removed. This extreme violence led many to believe that the killer must have had some knowledge of anatomy or medical skills. The first murder occurred on August 31st, 1888, when Mary Ann Nichols was found in Bucks Row with her throat cut and her body severely mutilated. Just a few days later, on September 8th, 1888, Annie Chapman was killed in a similar way. The next significant murder was on September 30th, when 2 women were killed on the same night. Elizabeth Stride's murder was less brutal than the others, leading some to believe that the killer was interrupted. However, later that night, Catherine Eddowes was found murdered in an even more gruesome fashion, with part of her face mutilated and organs removed. The final victim, Mary Jane Kelly, was murdered on November 9, 1888. Her murder was the most violent, and her body was so badly disfigured that it was almost unrecognizable. The police quickly realized that they were dealing with a serial killer. However, despite extensive investigations and efforts to catch the killer, they were unable to make any arrests. The police received a number of letters, some of which were believed to have been written by the killer. One of the most famous letters, known as the Dear Boss letter, was postmarked September 27, 1888, and it was the first to use the name Jack the Ripper. The letter claimed responsibility for the murders and mocked the police for their inability to catch him. Whether the letter was genuinely from the killer or a hoaxer trying to create confusion remains unclear. However, the letter contributed to the growing fear and fascination surrounding the case. As the murders continued, the police focused their efforts on finding the killer. They conducted numerous investigations, interviewed hundreds of suspects, and even used bloodhounds to track the killer. However, no solid evidence was ever found. The lack of progress led to frustration and anger among the public, and many began to speculate about the identity of the killer. Over the years, several suspects have been proposed, but none of them have been proven to be the true Jack the Ripper. One of the most persistent theories is that the killer was someone with medical knowledge. The precision of the cuts and the removal of organs suggested that the killer might have been a doctor or someone with training in anatomy. Several suspects were put forward based on this theory, including Montague John Druitt, a barrister who was suspected because of his apparent mental instability and the fact that he died shortly after the last murder. Another suspect was Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant who was known to have a history of mental illness and violent behavior. Another theory that has captured the public's imagination is that the Ripper was a member of the British royal family. This theory gained popularity after the publication of the book The Ripper and the Royals by Stephen Knight. The book suggested that Prince Albert Victor, Queen Victoria's grandson, was involved in the murders. However, there is no solid evidence to support this claim, and it is generally regarded as a sensationalist theory without any real basis in fact. Despite numerous investigations and theories, the true identity of Jack the Ripper has never been discovered. Modern forensic techniques, such as DNA analysis, have been applied to the case in recent years, but so far, no breakthrough has been made. The lack of answers only adds to the mystery, and Jack the Ripper remains one of the most famous and elusive criminals in history. The mystery of Jack the Ripper also reveals a great deal about the social conditions of Victorian London. Whitechapel, where the murders took place, was a poor, overcrowded area where many people lived in extreme poverty. Many of the victims were women who worked as prostitutes, living in dangerous and vulnerable conditions. The murders brought attention to the unsafe lives of these women and the harsh reality of life in the slums of London. The public's reaction to the murders was one of fear and panic. The media played a key role in spreading news of the murders and sensationalizing the case. Newspapers reported on every detail, often exaggerating or fabricating stories to increase sales. The police, under increasing pressure to solve the case, were criticized for their failure to catch the killer. The public's frustration grew, and the mystery only deepened as time passed. Today, more than a century after the murders, the story of Jack the Ripper continues to captivate the public's imagination. Books, films, and documentaries have been made about the case, and people continue to speculate about the identity of the killer. New theories and suspects continue to emerge, but the mystery remains unsolved. In conclusion, the murders committed by Jack the Ripper in 1888 are one of the most famous unsolved mysteries in criminal history. Despite numerous investigations and theories, the true identity of the killer has never been discovered. The case continues to fascinate people around the world, and the fear and mystery surrounding Jack the Ripper still linger in the streets of Victorian London.